So hello officially to this discussion starter session on students, a rich source in quality assurance. My name is Geneviève Lefort. I'm the vice-rector for quality at the University of Applied Sciences and Arts of Western Switzerland. I also happen to be a member of the EQAF program committee, so that's why I have the pleasure to chair this session. So we can go on now with me presenting you the two speakers that we have to start this discussion, introduce this discussion. We have Renáta, who is from Slovak, and then we have Adrian Zontek, who is from Poland. And we will start with Renáta. You're the coordinator of the analytical unit at the Slovak Accreditation Agency for Higher Education. The deal is that you have about 5 minutes for a short presentation. Then Adrian will take over for another 5 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion for a little less than 30 minutes. So before, let's go. Renáta, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for coming to our discussion starter. I'd like to talk today about the survey that we did in our agency, which is called Quarter to Quality Education. Quarter means quarter to an hour, which means 15 minutes for taking this survey. And to quality education means that if you take quarter hour of your time, then you can actually change the quality of education in Slovakia. This was the slogan we used for students. And it is a survey about student views on their higher education institution. So I'd like to first say a few words about demography and the basic data in the questionnaire. So we collected data in May 2021. We got about almost 20,000 valid questionnaires back, which is about 16% of the student population in Slovakia. We also had We also had specific groups, which were the students with special needs and international students, as you can see, which were quite substantially represented. The questionnaire had 4 language versions, 2 languages for our citizens, Slovak and Hungarian. Hungarians are our biggest minority. And then we had for international students, English and Ukrainian. Ukrainians are currently the biggest group of international students in Slovakia. We also prepared a visual impairment version of the questionnaire for people with a sight problem. And the results of the questionnaire are actually representative on the level of higher education institutions, form of studies, meaning part-time, full-time studies, levels, BA, MA level, and all the study fields. Now, there was about 260 questions in the questionnaire, so the quarter hour was a little bit of exaggeration because it was a little bit longer, obviously, to invest in your quality education. But then we had a lot of areas to cover. We started with a specific part, which was only for students in their first years of study. So we asked them about their choice of the institution, how did they see the entering exams and the adaptation process. Then we also asked about the study itself, which means what they are taught, how they are taught, what is the approach of teachers to them, their participation in student life, and their engagement in the governance of universities. Obviously, we also had to include the section on pandemic, how this was dealt with in the organizational point of view, but also from the view of what students learned during pandemics. And we also looked at the academic integrity. It means to what extent there are misconducts at least in the respective institutions and how the prevention is organized. We are also interested in internationalization, which means this year we just asked about the mobilities of our students going abroad, which also covered previous years, and international students who came to Slovakia, how did they choose Slovakia, what we should improve, and so on. And as I already mentioned, we focused also one part of the questionnaire for students with special needs and the specific areas that are interesting for them, and also for part-time studies, because this is a specific group of students who are usually already older students and working students and have different organization of studies. And then the questionnaire finished with the final year students' questions. So this was only final year students who answered. How are they feeling prepared for the life after the higher education? Okay, and why did we do all of this huge exercise? So we had actually two aims. One aim is to move towards student-centered learning in Slovakia, and we strongly believe that this is not possible if we don't hear the student voice about how the students view their studies and life at the higher education institution. And the second aim is pretty ambitious. So we would like to bring change for students with the questionnaire. And also we what it means is that actually students were very eager to fill in the questionnaire only if they can see some change afterwards. So this was the biggest motivation for them to actually participate. How did we achieve, or how we are aiming to achieve these goals? So firstly, we sent detailed feedback to each institution, which means that they got their own data to work with it for their own improvements. Then we are preparing a specific application for our reviewers or experts of panel experts who will get data that should signal some problems in the field. We heard about the importance of signaling yesterday, but of course there will be need also for interpretation. And also we use this data to speak to the stakeholders, which are government, obviously Ministry of Education, stakeholders who can influence system-wide interventions, but also non-government, which is, for example, organizations involved in mobility programs. And the last and absolutely not least was that we would like to show that students can actually bring about a change with a constructive feedback. So we would like this to become a learning experience in this area and encourage students to do so as much as possible. So thank you very much for your attention. If you would like to contact me later, these are my contact details, and I'm going to be looking forward for discussion with you and for your ideas.
Thanks a lot, Renáta, for this short and sharp presentation. That is a good introduction indeed for later discussion. So now we'll pass the floor to Adrian Zontek, who is the Vice President of the Students' Union at the SGH Warsaw School of Economics. So up to you, Adrian.
Okay, so thank you very much. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to present here today on a subject of such importance, which is the role of students in quality assurance processes. So I would like to touch upon this topic based on our good practices at Warsaw School of Economics. I would like to start with a brief reminder that the quality is all about bringing together teachers, students, and the university administration, and that the quality assurance is about focusing on providing such environment, working environment, which is very important. And now we at the Warsaw School of Economics, we've developed over the years an extremely unique environment that has, I think, two most characteristic things. The first being that practically every one of us students has a freedom of choice when it comes to choosing our study program paths. And thus, consequently, we have an individual schedule. And secondly, that there is a huge part of extracurricular activities after lectures that also plays a huge part in our quality assurance system. So taking those two factors in consideration, we had to come up with innovative solutions in matters of quality assurance to engage those already active students with fully booked calendars in our activities and to make them interested in quality assurance. So one of our recent activities at our university are the webinars that are called Discussions Over a Second Coffee. This initiative was founded by our rector's proxy for learning and teaching processes, Professor Jakub Brudulak, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but supports me mentally, at least I hope. And about this initiative, this is a series of an open access webinars that are dedicated generally to the learning and teaching processes. And every meeting takes the form of a brief lecture with an esteemed expert in a topic discussed. And there is also a discussion that follows. And as I said, its main purpose was to create an open platform to share ideas and engage all academic community into the decision-making processes. And if it comes to what is discussed, this is the subject of the program committee, and the members of the program committee represents, let's say, 5 most important academic units at our university. And what is also important about our webinars is the fact that this initiative is not inclusive only for our university, but there are many representatives from Warsaw and Polish universities as well. And one could ask now, generally, what is so special about this form and about this webinars? So firstly, from our point of view, this is a very important opportunity to include students in the decision-making processes. We have our own representative in the program committee. This year, this is me as the vice president of our students' union. And I suggest the topics that are important for us students, our priorities. So this is kind of a bottom-up approach to what is discussed. And later on, we promote this on our social media to engage students as well. There's also an opportunity to share knowledge. There's always some participant who shares their publications, links, or reports. And most importantly, as I said, this is an open platform for dialogue and I think a real incentive to introduce change, maybe only because such topics are raised and discussed, and partially because university authorities and our lecturers are being present, so they actively listen to what is said. And even if someone cannot be present there's always an opportunity to listen to what is to listen it again or read a summary in our newspaper. And what is also important here is the fact that this is only one example of a situation where we students at the Warsaw School of Economics share our knowledge and observations about our academic environment, and that we have the same goals as our authorities to achieve the better community, the better environment for us to grow. So here you have on the slide listed many initiatives where we students have our voice and we are present in the quality assurance and quality enhancement processes at our university. But due to our time restrictions, of course, we don't have the time and place to discuss them. So maybe I will leave them for the discussion that will follow. And for the time being, thank you for that. And I cannot wait to hear about your questions and about your good practices at your universities in your countries.
Thanks a lot, Adrian. And indeed, we can leave those questions for the discussion. But before we get into the discussion, we have a little poll question that kind of touches both your presentation of different level, nationwide, and then in a university. So the student perspective on quality teaching and student services should be ideally gathered from you have different choices there. Actually, you can only pick one. Maybe a way to answer for you is also to see, what do you do in your institution? How do you gather the student perspective? So of course, on those two aspects, on the quality of teaching and also the student services. So you have the student rep bodies, the system-wide standardized survey, like what Renáta did, institutional survey, or external QA, or open discussion with students. Do we have something else? No, that's the last possibility. I give you a second or two to while you see on live question, I mean, the answers being given, do you have some comments, Renáta and Adrian? Looks like it's a lot of open discussion with students, yeah, but but it's rather informal, so it's not the kind of thing that you have like in your quality assurance system, for example. Renáta.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating that only 2 people so far choose student rep. Yeah. So that is a pretty surprising result for me.
Yeah, and
I think it's
Adrian,
perfectly...
as a vice president of the student union, you must be also
I think it perfectly shows the topic of our today's presentation, because we have the survey and we have, let's say, a part of discussion with students. But the student representative bodies are important. At least I like to tell that to myself. I don't know how about your universities.
Yeah, I've been part during my whole studies of the student representative body, so I know exactly what Adrian is struggling with.
Let's close maybe the poll and go on to some of the questions that appeared in the Q&A. Maybe first to you, Renáta. Could you give us maybe 1 or 2 info on the results of the not getting into too many details because we don't have the time, but maybe 1 or 2 points that you really want to raise and how those results were reported to the students themselves, actually.
Yeah, as you said, it would be quite impossible to talk about all the results, and we also didn't have time yet to go through everything in big detail. But what was very important for us was that students felt very strongly positively about their program, and this was several times repeated in the questionnaire, meaning when they choose the program, whether they would recommend their program. So they're really interested in what they are studying, and we feel that this is something that we can really build on. So that was a very positive information. What was less positive was that only more than 60%, 67% felt part of the community of students and teachers, and we put this question in. We compared the answers to this question with other questions, and it seemed to be very strongly related to other questions. So there was a correlation with all the other questions. So if the students feel part of a community of students and teachers, then they feel more positive about all kinds of other questions, even about academic integrity. So if they feel more part of the community, they reported less misconduct. So this was really interesting. And we have several other questions that are related to other questions, so with a wide correlation. And so we we told students in the end of the questionnaire they could sign up for getting the results if they want, which was most of the students actually. And we sent them the first results right after we closed the survey because we had a quick press conference. And now when we finally presented, we made an online application for public. So we sent them this link and more information, and we could see, because we also looked at how many of them opened the email from us, and there was quite a high opening rate. So we could see that they really looked back at this data. So this is how they got the direct information from us.
Okay, and how do you motivate them in the first place? Because 260 questions, that's quite a lot. I mean, I don't know if I would have the time.
I mean, I have problems with my schoolwork, so if it's any extra and it's not like entertainment, this would be very hard to motivate myself.
So what we used was actually, first of all, we had these group interviews before the questionnaire where we asked them what would motivate them, what are the sources that, who are the authorities for them to tell them to fill in the questionnaire. Surprisingly for us, or at least for me, we thought it's going to be some YouTubers or something, which we were ready to ask them to help, but no. I would like to ask Adrian, who does he think are the biggest authorities for students?
I would say other students.
No, it was actually teachers, their own teachers, which was also very interesting and I think very important. And also when we asked them in the end of the questionnaire, how did they learn about questionnaire, it was a lot from their teachers. So teachers maybe should be more self-confident about their position in students' lives. It's really important. So that was one thing. So we knew we have to go through teachers. So we asked the universities to help us. We had a small webinar with them before launching the questionnaire and asked them for help. And they really did help us. We got all the email addresses from our registrar. So we emailed to 98% of students directly, which was also very helpful. And then we had also communication campaign, and we had a lot of presents. So they could even win an electric scooter. That was a number one.
That's how you get them.
The winner was came from a village which was called The Winner, which was really funny. And I think not many people believe us. This was not set up, but this is how it was. The winner was from The Winner village. So yeah. So yeah, and one important thing, which the universities were a little bit surprised about it, but we did reminders every week. And in the last week, we did 2 reminders. And people from universities brought us back, but I already sent it to students. Why do you ask me again? And we said, but we see it in online, like the peak after the reminder, like you have, you start and then it drops the filling in the questionnaire. And then we sent reminder and it went up again. So in the last week, we got a couple of thousand more answers. So the reminders are really, really important. And the anonymity. This is what students really wanted.
And so I have another question for you, and then of course we'll also ask some questions to Adrian. But how were the students involved in designing the survey?
Yeah,
if they were at all.
Not directly now, but I did another research before where I did a lot of group interviews across the country, like with about hundreds of students from different universities. So in that sense, they were involved with providing qualitative information, and so this was basically.
But
like
do you have a national student union, for example, and
yes.
Who could say, okay, yeah, that topic is really important. You really have to address it in your survey, and that, well, maybe not.
Yeah, we do, and we will discuss it with them later. I mean, paradoxically, all of us who worked on this survey were at some point members of this national or even chairs of this student union. So we are pretty much connected. And one of my colleagues was still vice chair of the student union while designing the survey. So I mean, we are a very small country, you know. So yeah.
And I have a question for you, Adrian. When we see at the poll questions and the different ways to finally get that student voice on different topics, with your webinars, first of all, do you have the impression you attracted new students? We're always, the big challenge of all of us is to really attract new or have more students to engage. You always have the same faces in all those committees and as student reps and stuff. Bringing a new format, did it help to reach out to new students or not?
Actually, I have to say that still this is a very young initiative.
Yeah.
So it launched during the remote lessons and our remote university. So I mean, the form is much more approachable. That's for sure, because it is in a form of a webinar. It is much more approachable and maybe comfortable for students to participate in it. But it is not as easy as it seems. At first, we as students were not, let's say, as engaged, because it was strictly a project of ours, Rector's Proxy. And since this year, we try to be, as a students' union, we try to be as a co-host of these webinars. And that's why me and my team, we were trying to let's say, have our public campaign on our social media, on our groups, and that is how we try to, let's say, engage them in this. There are no fixed amount of students that attend them. and it becomes much more and more, the number of students is increasing every webinar.
When you say number of students, what do we have to represent? Is how many, more or less?
Okay, so usually, generally about 50 to 70 people comes to the webinars generally, but unfortunately with the majority of universities administration and lecturers, and until recently the students were minority. Now it's last webinar, but the timing was not very convenient. But the last webinar, there were about 10 students at first. And it's some part from our committees, and it's some part of the committees of other universities in Warsaw and in Poland. But we try to maybe engage them more and more. That was one of my priorities, to pick the topics that are important for them and that would engage them more in the future. So actually it depends on the topic of the webinar.
Yeah, okay. And you were talking about, maybe it was not the right time. There is a comment or a question like that, about also those practicalities. I mean, you have to schedule those things so that the students can actually attend.
Unfortunately, right? We are the co-host. We're not the host generally.
Yeah,
so
okay.
At our university, we try to organize such events at the evenings, because that is the most convenient maybe time of the day. But this time, this is the discussions over second coffee, and this is the tradition that it's organized at the 9 a.m. In the morning. So the whole first year of our universities, students has their English classes and other classes then. So that's kind of a setback here. But on the other hand, the form of the webinar that is online, it's much more approachable here, and it's much more easier to connect from your bed, let's say, than come to the university at 9 a.m.
I have another question regarding those different instances of ways students can be represented. Okay, we have the student reps, we have the official different instances, bodies in the institutions where students are also elected. We have now these kinds of initiatives like you have with your webinars. Do you see maybe a concurrence, or when you have different actors maybe talking or thinking, reflecting about the same topics, do you see that then the student reps may think, well, that should be our job to talk about that, and not the people coming in this webinars if it's not the same people? I mean, how do you see that? The multiplication of different canals where people, it's good, but is there a risk?
It's kind of hard to say here, because as I said,
knowing that, just if I may, knowing that of course when you just come to a webinar, you're not elected, so you don't represent anybody.
The thing is that those webinars that we organize, at least for now, they are in a form of a lecture at the very beginning, and when the discussion follows, we try to maybe to grant the space for the students as much as we can. But in a matter of our university, as I said, we have very, very active students. We have almost 62 students organizations that are actively interested in many cases in business, politics, some international affairs, and same thing applies to the students' union. And I have to say here that we have such institutions that there is sometimes a conflict of interest when, for example, we as the president, me as a vice president and president of the students' union, we have our own agenda that sometimes stands in the way of the chancellor of our university, of the administration, who has the rules of the procedures that maybe that are opposed to our propositions. And I think that the nice thing about these webinars is the fact that previously we discussed them in the program committee, with our vice rector, with the chancellor, and then we discussed them at the forum, so everyone can listen to them. And as I said, this is maybe a real incentive to change, because everyone listens to them practically and thinks about them, and it creates an entirely different environment.
Okay, thanks. Maybe back to you, Renáta. You said that of course, the results of the survey were given to all the universities. They have access to their own numbers. What do they do with it? Do you have an idea? Maybe give us a couple of concrete, practical examples.
Yeah, so this was actually a first year of the survey.
Yeah.
We will probably do it biannually, because so that also institutions have enough time to do some change. So which would not be in 1 year. Plus, the data is also influenced by pandemic. That's quite clear. I mean, how the students answered different questions. But what is our aim is to basically use this data during the quality assurance process itself. So, as I said, there will be an application that the experts will get, which will signal for them. So they will not have to go through 260 questions, but these questions will be connected to the criteria, and it will signal to them where it seems to be like maybe something to look at. But obviously, as was said also yesterday, we cannot say that what we are signaling is actually the reality. We are just providing a signal, but then the experts have to go and look and ask questions, and whether this is happening, and maybe what is the institution doing with these things. So this is a direct impact on the accreditation process. But as I said, we also really use it already in the communication with the ministry or the government office, where we also communicate these system-wide issues, which we can see that they're happening. So there are multiple ways, and we also are quite active in the public space. So we had already like 3 or 4 press releases from this. So the wide community is also involved. I basically almost every week give certain answers to journalists and so on. So there is also pressure from outside about our data. So to respective people, what are they going to do with it? And the application we designed is actually, you can even look into directly in a specific program of an institution, and you can look at the similar program in another institution, how students answer there.
Okay.
And so this is a power of information, I would say, to some extent.
Okay, so at program level as well, then maybe the people responsible for programs could actually use those data to do stuff.
And see also if this is a situation in another school, although the application doesn't provide all questions, because it was impossible to put on. But as I said, and the schools get more detailed information that we put outside for the public, so they have more information about it.
Do you have any issue with the contextualization of the data?
Yeah, for now, as I said, I am still building on the research I did 2 years ago, which was really big. I did not only interview students, but also teachers and managers and so forth. So we did around 150 interviews around the country with really everyone, including the HR specialists about graduates and so forth. So and we also did in that project surveys with higher education teachers, PhD students abroad, Slovak students abroad, and so forth. So I had a lot of data to contextualize, but maybe with the next questionnaire we will have to also go back to some qualitative methods, because I don't believe that we can only we can just interpret numbers without the context, where we'll need to talk more about it. So yeah.
Do you plan on monitoring or measuring what that's a question from Lewis. Hello, Lewis. How do you, what do you do to ensure the results of these student surveys are used across the university to improve quality? So do you plan on monitoring that and doing maybe a report after that, or?
Yeah, that's actually the work mainly of the expert panels. So the expert panels get the answers, and then they will go with those specific answers. They get even more detailed data than the university, so they have even more information. Plus, they have us to consult with us the questions and answers. And they can also look through the system. So they should go and ask about it, and then let's say in some time later, because our agency can. We have from the law, we have to every 2 years kind of monitor whether the institutions are in line with the standards. So this can be one of the indications to look at whether they are with the standards. So when we repeat the survey, we can see if something changed or didn't, because this is the first shot. So we can't really say now if something changed. We can only ask them, is this the case, or why is it not the case, and what are you planning to do with this? But so far, we really seen a lot of cooperation from, I mean, a lot of people from institutions, from higher education institutions were very interested in the data. And I think that those that really want to do change, then they can. And the advantage, if we compare it with the institutional surveys, is that you can actually look at other institutions and even programs in your same field, how this looks like there, because sometimes you can say that, okay, the practical classes are more relevant for doctors, less for philosophers, let's say. So I don't want to compare philosophers and medical doctors. So, but you can compare medical doctors in Bratislava and in Košice now, if you want. So, so I think this is a big advantage.
Okay. Anybody in the audience who wants to appear on the screen and ask live a question to our two speakers? If yes, I guess you have to raise your hand somehow in the participants thing. And if you do, I hope somebody is going to tell me that you do so that I can put you up on the screen. But it doesn't seem to be the case. While you're thinking about it, another question maybe to both of you, or maybe more to Adrian, but actually to both of you. How can you make that students get, or do you train the students to actually get involved in quality assurance itself? And how do you do that? And how do you do that more students get involved in the processes that we have in our institution regarding quality assurance? Maybe Adrian first.
Okay, so I think that we all present here can agree that it's hard to get us involved. And when I say us, I mean it affects me as well. What we do here as my committee, we have various, let's say, initiatives. The most, let's say, general one is that we release a survey, also as maybe as Renáta does, but on our university level. And this is we try to release it at least once a year to maybe, let's say, get a grip on one particular subject. Last year's topic was the remote teachings and how it's affected, and this year we try to see what good practices comes from the remote teachings after coming back to the university, and how can we introduce them. And well, let's see the results, because there is a distinction, and even let's say many of us argue about the positions in this topic. And here we try to promote it as far as we can and to engage them, let's say, by our campaign in social media. But we do not have such power as, let's say, our rector, who when we do the survey about when every term ends, we have the survey that where our students can assess their lessons and every lecturer. And we had the prize that if there's 50% of the responses, there will be one more day off from the university. but we haven't reached it yet. So, well, let's say this is the goal for the future. But I think the key here, from our point of view, is to engage them personally, to show them that this is the case that affects them personally, and make them interested in it as far as we can.
Okay, Renáta, on your point of view, your side of agency, really short. What is your view on that?
I had actually the same question on Adrian,
Okay.
but yeah, well, I mean, I would maybe go back to my previous research where I met students directly face to face, and I really could see they were very interested to share their ideas. The ideas were very, very interesting and important and smart. A lot of teachers in Slovakia often say students don't care, they are not interested, but from what we've seen, we had more applicants for the group interviews we could take, so they were really interested. But what was really important, as I said in the beginning, and I think this is something that will help, is that they need to see that there is something happening, and this something happening cannot be their punishment for saying something. This is very bad, and it does happen, and we were told about it many times, but it has to be that we take seriously their ideas, and we try to change things. This is going to encourage them to be more active. At least that's what I could observe, and I hope this is going to be something we confirm with our work now as well.
Indeed,
and actually we have another initiative.
But you won't have the time, Adrian. You won't have the time to talk about it because it's already 11:45.
Yes, but I just wanted to say that at our university, every one of us, we have the students' organizations and activities, and we try to engage them in projects that are based on design thinking basis, and they focus on these matters, but as a participation in the project. So that's another way.
Okay, great, thanks. And indeed, I was going to say, indeed, students, to come back to the title of this session, students are rich source in quality assurance, but not only. I mean, just for the life and the functioning of our institutions. So with that, I will just thank you both and the audience a lot for your input, for your participation. Many questions we couldn't answer. They're still in the question and answer tab. So if any of you want to give some written response later, feel free. It was a pleasure for me to chair this short but very interesting session. Hopefully next year.
Thank you very much, Geneviève.
Yeah, hopefully next year we can actually have a drink and see each other in real life. The same for the people in the audience, especially the ones that I know personally. And then I'll be happy to see next year, hopefully.